I remember I stupidly watched The Exorcist when I was about 8 or 9 years old at a house party, and it was really stupid to do that. But
well, to start with, I would like to know, since in this movie we deal with the topics about control and obsession, I would like to know which are those small details from your day-to-day life that make you lucid, just like Adrian does in the movie.
Oh man, driving in Los Angeles.
Exactly, I was expecting
Just
that.
traffic in Los Angeles, yeah. I think I've
Yes.
been like a couple of degrees away from just going fully crazy, like Michael Douglas in Falling Down, getting out of the car and just walking into the middle distance,
I know,
disappearing
there's
into the
traffic.
ocean slowly. He just walked into the water and never came back. That's definitely one of the things. Real life in general is frustrating. Just, traffic, paying bills, all the usual problems.
Traffic
Turning on the
makes
news
killers,
these days.
yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God, I hope never. I hope I
Hope
never
never
lose control like
reach to
Adrian.
that point, yeah.
Yes, I hope I never reach that point. I think being woken up from my nap before I need to be woken up is that will send me into a rage.
To a rage.
Yes.
Yes. Good answer, good answer.
I don't know. I do feel like I lose my mind at really. I mean, this could very easily turn into like a therapy session. I lose my mind at like injustice, stuff like that makes me really angry. I don't know if there's like small thing. Like I tell you what, queuing at the airport, people for security,
that's the
gets
thing,
me every
that's the one
time.
thing.
And you just know, you get in the line and you go, I know this is going to take forever. Because it's the wrong. There's a kid, and so that's going to be like 40 minutes. I'm going to be
Now, it seems that with horror, everyone has their own expectation of what a horror movie should be. Some people want to be frightened and have a good scream every couple minutes, and some expect the more silent routes. So for you, what's the perfect way to make horror?
Well, there is no perfect one way. It's really about what the movie wants to be. The thing is, horror is this big tree.
Yes.
And
branches.
yeah, all the branches represent the different subgenres. I mean, if you think about all the different types of horror films, zombie films, haunted house films, slasher movies,
So many
psychological
ways to terrify
thrillers.
people.
Yeah, when animals attack. I mean, we could go on and on. There's so many different subgenres within the horror genre, and each one of those subgenres requires something different. If you're making a monster movie, maybe you need to be louder, more graphic. If you're making a ghost film, maybe it needs to be more quiet. It's all about what the movie itself wants to be. With this movie, I knew it was about silence, and I knew it was about what you didn't see. Yeah, I wanted to build an entire movie around seeing nothing. And assuming that something was there.
Now, what some people don't expect about this movie is that when it comes to an abusive relationship, usually we think about just two people in it, but usually there's a lot of witnesses to the situation. So, since abuse happens every day in our real life, sadly, what do you think we can do if we were ever to become that witness?
A witness to that?
Yes.
I mean, I think it's very important to lend an ear to somebody who's going through something like that, to be a safe space, to be non-judgmental, to not criticize someone for their choices, but to just be there for them and to be strong for them until they're able to be strong for themselves.
Now that you mentioned strong, you mentioned that it's important for movies to show how women can be weak because it can show how strong and scared they can be. Actually, it's important to show that too. So how do you think a normal person in real life can find their empowerment and the strength and their own vulnerability?
Well, I mean, it sort of depends on the situation, but I think recognizing that we all have weaknesses and we're all vulnerable in different ways, and that's very human, and not penalizing ourselves for that or criticizing ourselves or others for that, I think is important,
Yeah, absolutely. So for you, I would like to know which are the type of horror that you grew up with, and which is the type of horror movies that you actually prefer.
Ooh, well, I grew up, I was a sort of late 80s kid. I mean, my kind of adolescence was like Scream and those kind of the resurgence of... But I remember I stupidly watched The Exorcist when I was about 8 or 9 years old at a house party, and it was really stupid to do that. But I feel like The Shining, that I feel like they are two of the best. The original Halloween and the new one that Blumhouse made actually is incredible. Like I do love it. But I think what's interesting about horror, Midsummer was amazing, Hereditary was amazing.
Yes.
Like really
Those
incredible.
are great movies.
But the thing that's interesting is that these movies lately, they're talking, specifically Hereditary and all of these movies, and The Invisible Man, they're telling stories that are important stories, and they're just veiled in this horror kind of veil. failed. So, the story of Invisible Man, it's about domestic abuse and what that's, the repercussions of what the fallout of that are. And so I think it's a very, very interesting medium.
I think the sort of 70s, 80s world of The Shining and Exorcist, and which I think has sort of come back, the idea of making a very, very scary movie that has an underlying message that is sort of societal or political. Jordan Peele obviously brought that back in a very big way with Get Out and Us. And that, I think, is something that I'm really attracted to, and I think audiences are as well.
Awesome.
That's an interesting question. I do love supernatural horror, ghost horror, when it's done well, The Shining. And I do love a really good dark thriller, like something like Seven or Silence of the Lambs. I feel like
great.
those films have one foot in the horror camp, one foot in the thriller camp. There's something about those types of really dark thrillers. It gets the best of both worlds,
Yes.
It's like a thriller or a mystery shot in a really horrific way.
When it comes to starting a movie that has this conversation, are you ever nervous to be a part of it, or are you actually excited and eager to be a part of this?
Oh no, I think that we witness, you see how many movies come out, or how many TV shows come out, and that don't really have much to say. And so I think as an actor, the minute that you're presented with something that actually has something to say, it's important. And not that we change the world in any way by what we do. I know that some people like to think that they do. We don't. We just turn up and say a couple of lines and get paid for it. But it is interesting if it opens up a conversation. I think that's important. And I do think that there's a duty that we have as an industry to do that, and to continually do that, to keep on opening up and telling stories and representing, so no one feels
left out.
Yeah. Invisible.
There
we go.
Nice,
you see that?
There you go.
Turned it right
What a
back
great way
around.
to end this interview.
Nice to meet you.
Pleasure
mate.
meeting you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, man. Take care.
Now, well, when it comes to the modern horror movies, it would seem that they all have something common, and that is that they all critique an aspect of our society,
Right.
our emotional, social, or psychological problems,
Right.
just like in this movie. So do you think that's what a horror movie needs to be today in order to be successful?
I don't know if it needs to be anything, because there's no formula for success. The problem with movies is it's such gambling, it's such smoke and mirrors, that the minute you think you've got it figured out, and the minute you think, if I do this, I'll get this result, that's when you fall on your face. You almost have to ignore any ideas of success or what will be successful.
You think it's right?
Yeah, I don't think about box office when I'm writing a film at all. Never in my life. All I think about is, when I'm writing a film, I just think, what would I enjoy? And also, I like to think of the audience sitting in a theater, and I like to watch the movie in my head. You get this feeling when you feel like you've got a scene that's really going to scare them.
Yes.
You get this feeling. But even then, it's just guesswork. Sometimes the scene that you think is really going to work fails, and this other scene over here that you didn't think much about is terrifying for everybody.
People.
So it's proof that the old William Goldman adage, nobody knows anything, it still holds true. Nobody knows anything when it comes to making films.
Now, finally, I believe that in this movie we have a literal invisible man, but we also have an invisible woman, because nobody seems to realize the situation of Cecilia. So I would like to know, which is the thing that makes you feel this way, underestimated or invisible, as one might say?
I think for me, it doesn't thankfully happen as often as others have experienced, because just circumstantially. But I have experienced times for sure when I have felt like I have said something, and because I was an actress or a woman or young or whatever it is at the time, that maybe my voice wasn't as important or as serious. And I think that a lot of people have experienced that in different ways, and not just women. And that's something that you have to sort of recognize and go, all right, that just happened. Moving on, I'm going to continue to use my voice, and I'm going to ignore that. And I think that that's something that is very, very common, and common in a lot of really strong women too.
Oh man, I mean, I when I think back to like my high school years, just sort of wandering around trying to figure out who I was, definitely not in the popular group of kids. I mean, everybody's usually had a time in their life where they feel invisible, not seen. But for some people, it's a lot worse. I mean, some people feel like their entire existence or being isn't seen in society. I mean, if you're if you're a kid who's growing up, maybe you know that you're gay and you feel like that's not accepted in your school or in your community. I mean, that can make someone really retreat within themselves and feel truly invisible.
Yes.
You know, I have a lot of empathy for those people who really don't feel seen, and I'm glad that movies are starting to
Give them a
become
voice.
a little more diverse. Yeah, we're starting to see a wider breadth of stories, you know, than we did when I was growing up. Anyway,
Thank you so much for your
thank
time.
you.
It was a
Cheers.
pleasure meeting you.
Thank you. Pleasure to meet you
Have a
too.
great day. Thank you so much for
Thank
your
you
time.
so much.
Have a great
Absolute
day.
pleasure.
Nice T-shirt.
Thank you so much.
Let me help you.
You can't help me.